DJ Scott.
You're a philosopher? Yes, I think very deeply.
Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Kepra. This is Jasmine. And today we're going to be talking about women's health. This is actually our second go around. If some of you I know caught the first video, and we had some audio issues, so we thought this issue to be important enough to plan and do this again. So we hope that the sound is good, and I'm also glad because since our first interview I was able to really think about what we talked about and even come up with some more questions.
Okay.
So I'm really excited. So let's get right to it. So when we last talked, we talked about your journey into health. Really.
Right.
So talk a little bit about that. Like, how did you get into this lifestyle, and like how you were? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so I first started out when I was around 16. I stopped eating pork. So that was the first thing that I cut out.
Okay.
And around, 18, right before I went to college, I started to get more into the Rastafarian type of lifestyle of eating idols. So of course I became vegan. And, throughout college, and I'm only 28, so it hasn't been that long since I graduated. But throughout college and even a little bit after, I went back to eating meat and then went back to
college?
Yes. Because there wasn't really a lot of options. It was only like a veggie burger at the cafeteria.
Okay.
So I just kind of started eating chicken again.
Okay. All right.
Because I was hungry.
Okay.
But, then I went back to being vegan and making my own foods. Because luckily in my dorm room we had a mini kitchen with a stove and an oven. So, yeah, I started back eating healthy again. More like a vegetarian. I was still eating some fish and some, cheese products. And then it just progressed more and more where eventually I cut out all the dairy, and then I was still eating fish, and then about 4 years ago, almost going on 5.
Okay, well let's all right. So let's get into some details while you were, because again we want to really key in on women's health. So a big part of a woman's health is obviously her menstrual cycle. So was there any noticeable changes from the time when your cycle started to when you started making dietary changes?
Yes. When I started making dietary changes, I saw a significant reduction in, the pain associated with it, cramping, because I used to have really bad cramps that I have to be on prescription ibuprofen, and a lot of times I would be able to get out of the bed. It would just be really terrible.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and so you had these issues, and then but when you, let's say when you first went vegan and then you added the chicken, did you notice a difference in your cycle? No, not so much.
Well, I was really young at the time. I wasn't paying attention, but
okay.
And then I did notice. I will say there probably was a difference. It probably is slight. I didn't stay vegan as long as I wanted to.
Right.
Because it was only really my senior year of high school, and pretty much a few months into college, I started eating.
Well, what inspired you to really, do it in high school?
Well, I had started getting into, the Rastafarian culture, and they eat idol.
So what inspired? What drew you to the What drew you to the Rasta culture?
I mean, I just being natural. I was always natural, a woman, a female, a girl. I had natural hair, and I was just always interested because I majored in anthropology in college. So I was always interested in other cultures, particularly tribal cultures, and learning how they live with nature.
No, I'm always curious to see what inspires people, because there's so much in terms of you know, in terms of how our society and, you know, our dietary practices, our lifestyle practices. So it's always, I'm always curious because it's really the inspiration that really is going to fuel you to eat right and, you know, to keep inspiring yourself from whatever source that may be. So I'm always curious about that.
So I kind of will say it really started when I got introduced to Islam, and then I heard for the first time the concept of
that's with the pork,
not eating certain things, like certain things were not good for you. Because I was like a garbage can when I was younger. I ate any and everything, except for chitlins. I could never eat chitlins. Okay. But I used to eat everything else.
Okay.
So that was kind of like where it first started. You know, like certain things are not good for you to eat, and trying to figure out why. Of course, it was religious reasons, but there were also health reasons, which I found out later on in life.
You said there were health reasons. Oh, you found out the health. Okay, it was more religious.
First it was like religious, like, the Bible says you're not supposed to eat, pork or certain foods. Right. And then later on I realized that these things weren't healthy to eat anyway. Okay, good. So then now we fast forward, because at this point, in terms of you experiencing a real shift in your health, that was when you pretty much went towards the raw. Because was there anything in between that time, between the time, from high school, college to more recent, where you had your experience with raw foods? I'd say the biggest change was raw food. That was the most noticeable and biggest change was raw food. I noticed some changes when I became vegan, but it really, skyrocketed when I became raw. Okay. Okay.
All right. So, we're going to talk about that. I mean, like, really get into the details, because, first, when you went full out vegan, like, how long was that process? That was like basically right out of college?
No, it was a few years after I had got out of college, maybe 3 years. I had always been working towards my health and, trying to juice, but I was still eating fish. So I was a pescatarian, what people would call. So I was still a pescatarian about a few years out of college. And then, I'm not going to try to count the year, but about 5 years ago, I decided to go fully vegan. Like, no dairy, no fish, no seafood.
And that was when you obviously noticed a change.
Right. And soon after that, I became raw. So
how soon? Like, what was that period? Maybe a year?
It wasn't even a year.
Wasn't even a year.
It wasn't even a year. But I would say I was already eating a lot of, vegan meals and vegetarian meals. Like, when I ate fish, I only ate it maybe twice a week. I really didn't eat fish that much, and I always try to eat more, fruits and vegetables. And I used to make raw dishes when I was pescatarian, so I had like a variety, in my diet. So I was already introduced.
But like I said, at this point, your cycle, your emotions, and everything connected with that, you notice a change.
Yes, I noticed a change when I became vegan, and even more so when I became raw. I was still eating fish, so I don't think it was that much of a change, maybe slight.
But when you went raw, it was vegan.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's get into that. You went raw. Okay, and first, again, because I've been asking you about your cycle. So how was your cycle when you went raw?
Well, I didn't have any cramps. No pain whatsoever.
Now, and was this the first time you had a cramp-free, pain-free menstrual cycle?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, we want to repeat that. We want to key in on that. The first time in what? I mean, when your cycle start? When you were maybe 10, 11?
My cycle started when I was 9.
9 years old.
Yeah.
9 years old.
Which is not. To me, I don't think that's good because all the, the hormones and the food and all that stuff. There's another interview that I have when I talk about that, and I talk about
as women, because women are getting their cycles at such an early age, it is actually speeding up their whole life cycle.
Yeah, that's not good.
Yeah.
That's not good.
Right.
Yeah.
So now you went raw and you've had a painless, cramp-free cycle. Now, what was in terms of the length and the heavy? Was it light, heavy?
Well, I had really heavy cycle when I was younger, because when I was around 19 years old, I was diagnosed with fibroid, a uterine fibroid. I had.
So you had fibroid? I didn't know.
Yes,
Okay.
I had one.
You had one.
Yes, and I also.
At 19.
Yes, and I also had endometriosis, which is when you get a lot of extra. I don't know what it's called, buildup of skin on the outside, like scarring on the outside of your reproductive system, and I also had polyps, so I had to have surgery. I didn't say this last time.
Yeah, we didn't talk about this.
Yeah,
okay.
I had to have surgery when I was
wow.
like 20.
So I mean, I'm so glad they didn't take your uterus out.
No, they didn't take it out. Like I had.
But that's what you know. They'll do that.
Yeah, they didn't want me. Well, I had a really good doctor.
Okay.
And he, of course, wanted me to be able to have children.
Exactly.
Of course. So he's actually, I think his name is Dr. George. He developed a certain type of procedure where you kind of like, because the polyps were inside of my uterus, so he went in with some type of medical instrument that kind of burned them off.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a very traumatic experience.
I could imagine. Now, I hope that inspires you to say, look, whatever I'm doing, I need to do something different.
Right.
Okay.
And at the time, I didn't realize that it was connected to the things that I was eating, as well as my emotions.
Well, and the doctor, they're not going to...
No.
Then,
Well, I don't think he knew either.
Right.
Because when I went to him, later on in life, to get checkups and all that, and then he was talking to me about, eating healthier, and it actually suggested that I become vegan, but I was already vegan at the time.
Okay.
So,
okay.
Yeah, so the medical industry is catching up, as well as, other independent alternative medicine people, are encouraging a more healthier lifestyle.
Okay, so how old were you when you went raw? Because I mean,
I'm 28. Let me backtrack. I'll say about, I want to say maybe 25, I guess. Is that the 25?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, well, a few years, okay.
Yeah.
All right, so now if you don't want to answer this, maybe no answer is an answer.
Okay.
An admission of guilt, as they like to say.
Get ready.
But, one of the things that a lot of our women have issues with, again, a lot of times they may have a unpleasant odor. So, was that an issue that you had? Because again, if you got fibroids, you got this, a lot of times those things will accompany.
Yes, and there's multiple things that can cause it. Sometimes it can be your partner. He may have something and give like stuff like gonorrhea. Yeah. Okay. And
but let's say that's not the case. Let's say
she's a virgin and and she's got all these issues. Because when I got those issues, I was essentially I think I was a virgin.
What? Oh, you were okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So but of course having partners can increase with different. But that's another thing.
Right.
So. Okay, the question was. Does the food cause odor?
Right.
Yes.
Because basically, it's almost like somebody with halitosis.
Right.
But that's coming out the mouth. But a woman, especially if she gets stimulated and the juices start flowing, and then but there's an odor.
Right.
And that is not pleasant.
Definitely, because what I've noticed is.
So you're saying you had an unpleasant odor.
Yes, at least every woman has had an unpleasant odor in their life.
Okay.
Either from like the food or maybe an STD or something like that.
Right.
But I know that a lot of times when a woman, whatever, I noticed in myself, whatever I would eat would, it would smell like that. So
what are like the
major,
right, the major culprits, like, to stay away from that
fish.
produce that fish? Okay, that's
fish causes you to smell like fish. I'm pretty sure, you know, meats in particular, like pork and I'm sure dairy, which causes a lot of, you know, bacteria and and all kinds of stuff. So.
Well, what about like a lot of cooked starches for our vegans that are?
I think that's what I was gonna say. I believe yes. If you eating a lot of sugar and starches, especially like refined sugars, it's going to create a lot of like a candida imbalance, which is what causes that, like yeast infections, which is what makes it smell, or bacterial vaginosis, which also is another thing that makes it smell based off of what it is you're eating, and bread and stuff like that. Yeah.
Right. And then as far as your, because the last time we talked, you had mentioned that. Well, let's save that because that'll get into. But before I ask that, I want to ask in terms of your. I guess it's a good segue into what we the meat of the discussion, which is like your libido.
Right.
You know, now you're sexually active. You had mentioned before that actually sex was always painful. So talk about that.
Yeah, before I became raw, as soon as like 30 days after I became fully raw, you know, a whole lot of things changed. But before that, sex was always painful to me.
And why was that?
I believe it's because all of the, you know, all the issues
you
had
fibroids.
Yeah, I had fibroids, endometriosis, which is caused by eating dairy and also eating the fish and having the polyps and all. Because endometriosis is kind of like putting like extra connective tissue on your womb, so it's kind of like it makes everything hard, you know, so they can't really move around. So painful intercourse is one of the symptoms of endometriosis.
Wow.
Right. So that's why, and so I probably had endometriosis up until, you know, I became fully raw and stopped eating the fish.
Interesting. So now, okay, you're raw, and talk about the. I guess there was a detox that needed to happen.
Right.
Or that did happen. So talk about that. Like, what was that like? Was it difficult? Did you have challenges, cravings?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely had some cravings. I think primarily because I was anemic, and I had always been anemic, of course, with the heavy bleeding and all that. So I was always anemic. I didn't know it, but I was. So of course, when I became raw, you know, I wanted, you know, some beans, some cooked food, you know. But what was the other question? You asked me too.
Well, in terms of the detox.
Oh, the detox.
Yeah, the detox that needed to
So I didn't really notice a heavy. I know a lot of people when they, you know, change their diet, they have a lot of detoxification symptoms like headaches and.
Well, did you do any juice fasting?
I did. I was juicing even when I was a pescatarian.
Okay.
So I believe that with me introducing those types of food and even some raw foods and, you know, just strictly vegan meals, I believe it helped me along the process. So it was kind of like my detoxification happened over the course of some years instead of me, you know, going cold turkey, which is what I did when I was younger. But I took a little more time to actually get to that point of being raw. So, and I also became, I was vegan before I went raw. So I was eating cooked food. So I believe that actually, you know, helped with my body transitioning into that. So I didn't really experience a lot of negative detox symptoms.
Okay. All right. So what inspired this interview was a relationship meeting, I guess you can say, that we had maybe a few months back, and the topic had turned to sex, and you went on to share some very telling information that was very informative to me as someone who, you know, you speaking for yourself, who went raw and had like these amazing experience. so just I guess let's get into that. Like what, you know, because again now, you know, just to recap, you know, you've had a lot of issues, a lot of feminine, reproductive, even sexual issues in your womb area, from endometriosis, fibroids. You said you had surgery, all really almost before 20, and long painful cycles. Really a poster child for you know, almost everything wrong, and then the cycle starting at 9. So now you go from that to going to raw. Well, first, before we get into that, was there any sort of, with the detox, was there any sort of discharge that you may have attributed? Was there any discharge? And if it was, did you attribute that to detox?
For when I went raw?
Yeah. Not anything noticeable.
I don't remember.
Okay.
Because I didn't know that this would happen, so I wasn't really like looking for it, you know?
That's a good point.
I wasn't like, you know, taking notes, but I do remember like, oh, I'm not cramping. Right. You know?
But so at this point, you go raw, and you have a partner, and
who actually helped me to transition.
Right.
Right, because he's raw.
So at what point in your intimacy did it become from painful to pleasure?
About 30 days after I became raw.
About 30 days.
Because when we started becoming intimate, I wasn't fully raw yet.
Right. Okay. But but you were vegan. Okay. So 30 days into your raw, it was something that you probably didn't expect. Okay. So was it just pain? Was it just painless, or was it like, because you had talked about? Well, I'm gonna let you say it. Right. Okay. Because well.
So I guess get into the nitty gritty of the whole situation. You know, so after I became raw, after 30 days, you know, we were still being intimate. And eventually I started noticing that I was having orgasms. Okay. During intercourse. Okay. That was something that, you know, I had experienced this once in my life. But it became eventually that I was having them every time that we were having intercourse. Okay. And the first time was basically at that around that 30-day mark. You starting to have these intense internal orgasms. Right. You know what I'm saying? Okay. So what Kepper is talking about at the relationship conference, I told the women that if you go raw, that you will have internal orgasms, meaning orgasms during intercourse every single time that you have intercourse. And that's pretty much what happened to me. And I didn't realize that it was attributed to being raw until I had taken the Sacred Woman course by Queen Afua, who, you know, also mentioned something similar, that when you do go raw, you will have this experience as a woman. And you will have really intense orgasms, and it won't be like every blue moon, it'll be every single time. And multiple times. Right. Like, during the session. Okay. Yes. Powerful.
So, all right, I kind of lost my thought there because I was
just saying. So when you live food, it'll make your womb come alive, right? So that she can experience, you know.
I mean, do you think that most women could experience this in 30 days per se, or it's going to take some time? I would say that for most women, it'll probably take some time.
I would say,
I guess every woman is different.
Right. It depends on what kind of issues you have. Do you have fibroids? Do you have a heavy cycle? You know, some women may not have, it may not be really heavy or really bad like that. And some women, it will. And then also it's, you know, are you vegan already? How is your diet? Or if you do eat meat, you know, do you still eat a lot of vegetables? Or are you just like a straight junk food person? You know, so Yeah, I think it'll depend on the woman, and her body. So.
Now, the other question I had, and I didn't ask this last time.
But it can happen soon, though.
Okay. Now, did you notice? Oh, okay. So, well, let's address the question I had earlier in terms of the odor.
Mm-hmm.
Did you notice a change with that being raw?
Well, I didn't have an odor when I became raw, but
so there was a change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't have an odor before.
Oh, you didn't have an odor before?
No.
I thought you said that you did. Okay.
No, it wasn't like a consistent thing. It was like one time.
Oh, okay, I got you.
Because I was eating dairy at that time.
Okay.
And when I stopped doing that,
that kind of went away. Okay.
But I still had heavy periods and other issues.
But basically, did it become like?
Well, you're not going to get a smell if you eat raw food.
Right, but if you did it become like a, the nectar of the goddess? That kind of
okay. Let me think.
Probably so.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, I'm just trying to. I guess what I'm,
I mean, it's not like I tested it out.
Right. So it's kind of different. It's not a question for you.
Right.
It's not a question for you. Okay. Fair enough.
But I'm pretty sure it would.
Right.
Because like I was saying, whatever you eat, it'll probably taste and smell like that.
Well, my next question is, and with women, I know that this varies as well. Mm-hmm. Their moisture level. Mm-hmm. Especially during intimacy. I mean, you have some women who, just by the nature of who they are, they can get very moist.
Yes.
And women who, on the other extreme, can get very dry. Most women probably are right somewhere in the middle, where they, again, it takes some work for the man to rev them up and get the moisture flowing. Okay.
So there are a couple factors that affect a woman's libido and moistness in that area.
Yeah.
One is, of course, the foods you eat, if it's causing you to have reproductive, illnesses like the endometriosis and fibroids. And on top of that...
So what effect did that have on you in terms of your moisture level?
I don't think it
made a difference?
No, I don't think I was as moist.
Okay.
So I definitely believe that, because when you're talking about the womb, it's kind of like just like a freestanding organ, underneath all of your intestines and all that. Mm-hmm. And also, if you're eating a lot of, foods that are really heavy, like meat and, potatoes and bread, it's going to cause a lot of heaviness on top of your womb, on top of whatever you already got going on, like fibroids and endometriosis.
Wow. Yeah.
So your womb is she's kind of like just being crushed over there, and she can't really,
be
open up like the lotus blossom.
Right, the flower. Yeah, absolutely. We got the picture.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so you noticed a increase in your moisture level. Mm-hmm. Like, was it significant?
Yeah, and based
so
off,
obviously, definitely making it more pleasurable for your partner.
Of course.
Okay. So did he comment on that? He's like, wow, babe, yeah, we gotta keep eating them raw, keep eating them fruits and them pineapples.
I don't know. He didn't really comment on it, but of course, he enjoyed it.
Yeah.
He didn't really say anything.
Okay, that's awesome. Okay, so let's kind of switch gears a little bit, because this is one of the things, and I've told you this, how enlightening this was for me. Mm-hmm. Because I have been doing this for so very long, but I'm a male. Mm-hmm. And there was really, for the men out there who are listening to this, I can say that there was no real significant difference for me. Again, I started this at a relatively young age, so I didn't have any male sexual issues. Mm-hmm. I know that men, because the foods that we eat in the society really overheat the body. Mm-hmm. So what happens is that
for
a man,
and then it makes women cold. Real cold.
Right.
Yeah.
So when men are eating, again, a lot of animal flesh and starches, what it does is, again, it'll clog up the pipes. And if there's no blood flow, of course, there's not going to be any blood flow down there, at least not in an efficient way. So then, in come the ED, the Viagra and the Cialis and all the other things, even the natural stuff. Again, you're really overstimulated. So I didn't necessarily have those issues as a man, but I always wondered, like, if I was a female, what type of, because see, women, obviously, like you said, at 9 years old, you're noticing already that you're basically have become a woman at that age. Right. So, as boys to men, we don't necessarily start to experience that. Definitely not at 9. So, so that's what was really curious and really interesting for me, to hear your testimony a few months back in terms of your experience with the raw and your sexual health.
Right.
So, and I'm glad I called it sexual health because really what I want to kind of get into and just get your thoughts, because I've had my fair share of experiences being married, divorced, etc. So I have my things that may, so some of my personal beliefs that may be true or not so true, but one of the things I always say is that women are never satisfied. What do you say to that?
Are you talking about sexually?
All the way around.
Well, okay, I know we talked about this last time.
Right.
Where I was telling you that because I'm basically in control of my sexuality, my sexual health, my sexual satisfaction. Because I noticed that as time went along and I was still eating raw food and, still engaging in intercourse, that I really didn't have to do much in order for me to get to that point. And I could, have an orgasm relatively quickly. So I will say that a lot of before I was sexually frustrated, which a lot of women are, because we're not really having those intense internal orgasms. That it may be from the outside, from the the clitoris or something like that, but it's not an internal during intercourse, which a lot of women really want. So,
right. So actually, let's because I had asked you last time, like if you had to, because a lot of women will orgasm basically from the clitoris stimulation. Right. So, on a scale of 1 to 10, what's the clitoris?
I think
clitoris
I said
orgasm.
2.
Right. You said 2.
Yeah.
Right. And then the internal orgasm being a 10?
There's more than that.
Well, look, you know what? Because, one of the things you mentioned that was interesting too is like, again, your area basically is so open. One of the things you mentioned that, and I'm sure every man would be interested in to know, is like, look, you're going to orgasm independent of a guy's size, his stroke game, etc., etc. Wow. Wow, that's amazing. So I'm curious, like how many orgasms would you have? Like, let's say in a 20.
How many I wanted.
Wow. So you basically was in control.
Yes.
Wow, that's amazing.
That's like how you were saying last time. You were saying a lot of women believe they can only have that satisfactory orgasm based off if the man, if he's a certain size, or
because the thing is, like, we know the G-spot is not like, it's kind of in there.
But
it's deep in there, like
I think I wanted to touch on that last time, because I was talking about there are.
So is it a G? It's not a G spot necessarily. It's not. It's just
the one I'm talking about is because I freed my womb up of all of that stuff that was on it. My womb was able to vibrate and move freely. Wow. So now I'm having like a orgasm that goes throughout my body instead of just, the G-spot.
I got you.
So it's really like...
So the G-spot, you making that sound like it's really similar to a clitoris orgasm.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of localized.
Yeah, it's localized.
It's
right
localized.
There. But
wow.
what we're talking about is like, you feel the orgasm that I'm talking about is you feel it all in your ovaries and like really everywhere. Yeah. Like everything gets stimulated. Because when you don't have all that pressure on the womb from, eating all those, that meat and all the dairy and the bread and all that stuff, and eating live vegetables that help to, wake her up. Now she's able to like, kind of move freely. Kind of like how, a lotus will, just freely float in the water.
Amazing. Man, that until I heard that, I've never been envious of women. That makes me envious a little bit.
Why?
I mean, I love the fact that I'm a man. It's almost like God, or however I was chosen to become a male. Was always put to describe that. Man. And
it's kind of like during when you're having intercourse, if you're having multiple orgasms, the more and more you have them, the more
intense.
Better they will come. Yes.
Man, wow. I mean, just on average, would you have like 3, 4, 5?
I say we would just have probably one because we had to go to sleep.
Right, it's good enough.
But if we really wanted to, it could be 2, 3. There's been plenty of times when I had 2, and a few times when I had 3 based off the time. But that's another thing that we were talking about is a lot of times me and him would actually orgasm
right,
at
y'all
the
would be
same
in sync.
time.
Y'all would be in sync.
We sunk up.
And that's obviously it's a problem with, again, going back to my last point about women never being satisfied.
Yes.
And men being really obviously very easily satisfied, and men being able to orgasm really quickly. Women is like frustrated.
Yes.
I was so close.
Yes.
That kind of thing.
Yes.
Man, had you just not moved this way, and it's just like, man.
Yes, that's true. That's very true.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying. I've reached a level of sexual satisfaction that a lot of women wish they could, get to. I'm not like out here like still craving for that, because that's really what it is. And then, when the woman doesn't get that after years and years of not really being satisfied, all that frustration is going to come out somewhere. So,
right.
Causes issues in other areas of your
life.
Exactly.
Wow, well that's powerful. I think we'll leave it there because again we touched on a lot. Definitely the health of our women, especially Black women. Given that the sensitivity to dairy, a lot of Black people just in general being lactose intolerant. But what's never really talked about is the issues, the reproductive issues, and then how it relates to sex, but then how it also translates into our relationships.
Right.
Because then it's like, okay, now, I mean, if we're trying to reproduce, that's one thing, but then when you reproduce and then have a family, but then you have like at the core of our essence in terms of us being sexual beings and not really being able to experience the higher levels of bliss as a unit.
As a unit, yeah.
I mean, that can really just disrupt the whole the whole family.
Oh yeah.
The whole family structure.
Definitely.
The whole family. So again, I admire you, for your openness and your honesty. I think if I had to poll maybe 10, 20 different women, I'm sure it would be less than 1 or 2 would be that forthcoming with that type of information. So I think that is just amazing, and I think like a lot of women are gonna not only be inspired, but that inspiration will maybe say, hey, look, let me put this to the test. Let me see what is possible with just my health in general. Because, I mean, you didn't obviously know that this was going to happen.
No, I didn't.
Was there anything, you know, because you mentioned Queen of Four, so we want to give her a big salute and shout out for all the work that she's done over the years. And you know, the many thousands of lives that she transformed. What type of I mean, I know you got confirmation, but was there anything in addition to, you know, her teachings, or what, you know, from what you experienced that really, you know, gave you more insight, more information in terms of like
in terms of the sexual health? Well, of course, it's kind of like, you know, with Sacred Woman, it's all really connected. Of course, when you heal yourself, you heal all of your relations as well, and all those things are a part of it. Especially your diet is a really, really, really big part, because during her program, of course, you start off wherever you are, and then you're encouraged to become vegan. And by the end of it, when you become that lotus blossom and you bloom, you are encouraged to become raw, 100% raw, because that's where your transformation is really going to happen in all areas of your life. So it's not just a physical thing or sexual thing or your relationships, but it's also a spiritual thing as well.
Okay. Okay. So have you? Because I know now, you know, because you've had a child. Did you orgasm with the childbirth? Because I heard that happens now.
I didn't orgasm with the childbirth, but when it happened, when I became pregnant, me and him, we did sync up in that moment. So I was able to capture all of his essence, which I believe contributed to, you know, the success of my pregnancy, my birth, as well as the health of my child. Okay.
So you haven't been able, but you know, through breastfeeding and, you know, that process, I know that you have not been able to maintain a fully 100%. We'll talk about that a little bit.
So I was trying to maintain being fully raw when I was pregnant, but probably around 8 months, I was, you know, kind of told that I have to start eating some cooked food, because I wasn't really I was still anemic, became even more anemic, because pregnant women become anemic because, you know, child is taking a lot of nutrients and blood from you. So I was encouraged to eat, you know, more cooked foods, still vegan, but more, you know, beans and like oatmeal and just different foods to help with my anemia, as well as getting a lot of nutrients. So I was still eating cooked food even after I had him, and was breastfeeding, because when you breastfeed, you have to eat a lot. Right. But now that he's about 19 months now, so I started back eating more raw foods and incorporating more and more raw.
Now, I asked because if you had to, I mean, I don't like putting percentages on it. You know, when people say, oh, I'm 80% raw, it's really like, okay, how? You know, I really don't. But if you had to put a percentage on it in terms of your, like, the raw you were able to maintain throughout, like, the latter parts of the pregnancy and through the breastfeeding, what percentage?
Until I had him. How much I was eating raw until I had him.
Until you had him, and throughout the breastfeeding process.
The breastfeeding process, I wasn't really raw at all.
At all? Okay.
No. I was hungry. I was eating a lot of food. Okay. But you have to eat almost like
you got to eat for 2 people.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's the same thing as being pregnant.
Well, the question what I'm leading to is were you able to maintain your lotus orgasms, as I call it?
Of course.
Okay.
So afterwards. Okay, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
So
even not being raw.
And the reason why.
Did it change? Did it shift?
No.
It didn't.
No, it was pretty much the same, and then got, you know, more better and better, because I believe that going raw for that amount of time did such a big transformation for my body.
Okay.
It was just such a huge transformation that the only way it probably would reverse is if I went back to eating meat and all that other stuff.
Okay.
Because then also I want to say I wasn't eating any gluten.
Okay.
So I still don't. I ate a little bit, but I stopped eating it soon after I started breastfeeding. So I didn't eat any gluten, and I really don't eat any soy. So you have to be, you know, a certain type of vegan, because soy and gluten can cause those issues too.
Right. Exactly. Well, again, I hope you enjoyed this interview. I really enjoyed it, especially second time around.
Okay.
I think our audio issues have been solved. So let's talk about what you do.
Okay.
And we'll give out how people can get in touch with you.
Okay, so I'm a raw food chef as well. I focus primarily on desserts, so I like to make a lot of raw desserts. I make raw brownies for Kepra, as well as some other vegan restaurants in the DMV area. And I'm also a holistic health coach, and help people who want to transition to either raw foods, veganism, or just start to eat more healthy. And you can contact me. My IG is the Unbakery DC, and you can DM me if you want to get some holistic health consultations. I don't deal with just sexual health, but just your overall health as well.
Mm-hmm. Oh well, yeah, it's a holistic thing.
Yeah, it's
for
holistic,
sure.
yeah.
The sex part is obviously just right. That's like the add-in.
Right.
That comes with it.
Right. Whether it's just like you want to just lose weight, or you just want to be healthier, or you just want to feel less stress, because your diet also affects your emotions too. But that's a whole nother video.
Absolutely. So it's the Bakery, THE, the un.
Okay.
THEUN
BAKERYDC.
Okay. So you can find her at the Bakery DC. Are you on Facebook as well?
I am, but I don't really. But please check me on IG.
On Instagram.
Yes.
Okay, great. So
my information is on there. Yeah. I think my number.
All right. Awesome. Well, again, powerful interview. I hope you got a lot out of it. Please like, share, subscribe, comment below. If you have questions for Jasmine, if you want to comment below for her specifically, you can reach out to her. But if you want to put it on the comment section, I'll make sure that
I'll go look at them.
Right, she'll go look at them and respond. So again, thanks for tuning in. I appreciate you, and until next time, peace.
Here they are, firsthand from the intelligent brown man. A vegetarian, no goat or ham, or chicken or turkey or hamburger. Cause to me that's suicide, self-murder. Let us get back to what we call hip-hop and what it meant to DJ Scott.
You're a philosopher?